Good morning. As many of you have experienced, the English department begins a sequence in public speaking during an RL Boys 6 a year with a classmate interview and informal presentation, a process that continues through the composition of and delivery of a personal speech in Class 5, an informative speech in Class 4, a persuasive speech in Class 3, and a speech of choice in the fall semester of senior year. The capstone project in public speaking then takes place during the English 12 mid-year exam period, when students deliver to their classmates an original speech that offers valedictory words of wisdom, a unifying insight or a collection of insights gained from or reflected in one or more of the texts studied during a student's time in the RL English classroom. This morning, we have the chance to hear from two seniors who will deliver their own speeches from the fall term, each in its own way about family and ancestry and learning important lessons from those who came before us. First, Paul Wilkinson, and then Eliot Park. I would like also to thank Mr. Phillips for his work with these boys and with the senior class more broadly during his first semester unit in speech making and public speaking. Please welcome to the lectern, Paul Wilkinson.
In an age of kings and empires, when borders were fragile and loyalty could shift like the tides, a small island held its ground, defiant against foreign rule. On this island, a local leader stood as a quiet but unwavering figure of resistance. He was a man of the land, known to his people and equally known to those who wished to silence him. One morning, as he cast his line at the edge of a still pond, shadows gathered in the trees behind him. Unseen and unheard, French soldiers crept forward, set on capturing the man who had defied their conquest. But before they could strike, he caught sight of them in the rippling water and sprang onto his horse, racing away through the narrow, twisting paths of the island. The soldiers pursued him, drawing closer, but he urged his horse onward, guiding it into a deep valley. Ahead lay a divide too wide to cross, a leap that seemed impossible. But with no time for hesitation, he drove onward, hooves pounding against the ground as he took off into the air, soaring over the gulf and landing hard on the other side. In the shelter of his castle, he turned at last to see his loyal horse collapse, succumbing moments later to its injuries and pure exhaustion. In the short term, it was just one sacrifice in a time of many. Yet, in the years that followed, this moment took on far greater meaning. The horse became a lasting symbol of freedom that would live on, etched in the memories of its people 500 years later. This man's name was Philippe de Carteret, an English lord on the French-occupied island of Jersey, a knight who commanded armies under Queen Elizabeth I, and my ancestor of nearly 17 generations. This story is one of many I've uncovered in my search to connect with my ancestry, a journey that has left a profound impact on me and one I hope to share with you all today. It all began as a simple curiosity. One evening, after hearing some classic family stories from my grandmother, I decided to type my last name into a genealogy site, wondering what I'd uncover. At first, I only found a few familiar branches of my family tree, but soon I was stumbling upon names that hinted at lives I knew nothing about. Names like my great-great-grandfather, who worked as a blacksmith in rural New England, and my distant relative who emigrated from Europe in the early 1800s. As I uncovered more, hours would slip by in fascination. I moved from digital records to more tangible sources, combing through old census data, birth certificates, and letters preserved in my family's attic. Each document offered a glimpse into a different life, someone whose existence had somehow led to my own. As I pieced together these fragments, I began to see something larger than a family tree. It was a journey into the roots of my identity. Take Philippe de Carteret's story, for instance. While I doubt I'll ever face soldiers on horseback, nor do I hope I will, the essence of his story, a refusal to surrender, a leap of faith despite uncertain odds, has stayed with me. I think about moments where I felt unsure, challenged, or even backed into a corner. In those times, remembering stories like Philippe's has encouraged me to push forward, even when the outcome wasn't clear. It's not that I expect to replicate his heroism, but knowing that he and others like him have existed in my lineage reminds me that I don't have to face these challenges alone. Understanding the sense of continuity made me realize that, like Philippe leaping across that ditch, we all face moments where we must make impossible-seeming leaps of our own. These challenges may be different, but the spirit that drives us to overcome them is timeless. Beyond values, learning about my heritage has grounded me in a way I never could have expected. There's something uniquely powerful in realizing that the life you're living is connected to so many others, each having made decisions, having taken risks, and having endured setbacks just so you could exist. The odds that you are here today are nothing short of miraculous. Only 18 generations back, roughly 600 years, the specific choices of 1,048,576 people have brought you into existence. Every single one of them, a stranger yet a part of you, endured countless unknowns and overcame untold hardships, all culminating in the fact that you are here now. When you understand this, it's impossible not to feel the weight of it, the staggering beauty of it. Take hold of your own life, live it with courage and purpose, because you've already conquered odds so immense they're nearly beyond comprehension. This life is yours to take, though remember it's more than just your own experience. It's a link in a chain of lives, stretching back through the centuries and forward into the unknown. Finally, I hope to connect this experience to something we all know well, something that's been instilled in me for the past 6 years, our school's motto, Motui Wiro Stokent, the dead teach the living. Each of us has a history, whether we know it or not, filled with countless people whose lives had meaning far beyond themselves. They faced struggles, took risks, and left behind a legacy. If we choose to pay attention, to look deeper into our past, we start to appreciate everything that had to happen for us to be here today. In doing so, we come to find that history isn't just a record of events. It's a source of strength, guidance, and purpose. Knowing this, I encourage each of you to look at your own families, your own histories, and consider the experiences that might lie behind your values. Because in understanding our heritage, we find more than just answers. We find a sense of belonging and the principles that make us who we are. So, I hope that in hearing about my journey, you feel inspired to seek out your own. In doing so, you might just find, as I did, that the past isn't as distant as it seems. Thank you.
On an early Sunday morning, Jintak, my grandfather, made a choice that changed his life forever. Instead of going to church, he decided to stay in his cousin's living room, hanging out with 10 of his closest friends and family. Outside, American soldiers patrolled in jeeps, tossing kids chocolates and coffee packets as they sped down the dirt roads. One of Jintak's friends found a grenade dropped by a soldier and brought it into the house. The kids crowded around to see, curious, but then the grenade exploded. In an instant, blood and bodies were scattered everywhere. If you look at my grandfather today, you'll notice his lower lip sags heavily to one side. And if you press on that area, you'll feel the sharp remnant of a grenade, a fragment still lodged beneath his skin. He survived, but others didn't. His cousin and a friend died that day, and many of the others were left paralyzed or severely injured. The fact that my grandfather survived and sustained the smallest injuries despite being close to the grenade was nothing short of a miracle. In sharing this story, I'm here to do more than recount the tragedies of war. Our elders' stories, like his, aren't just about the past. They offer us lessons for the present and the future. Today, I want to take you to my grandfather's apartment in Korea and demonstrate the value of learning from those who came before us. By the end of this speech, I'll hope you'll be inspired to connect with the elders in your life, listen to their stories before they fade, and honor the legacy that they've created for you. This past summer, I decided to spend 3 days visiting my grandparents alone. I took the train from the heart of Seoul to Chungjeongro, making my way to their small apartment on the 19th floor. The space is cozy, 3 tiny rooms and a living room crammed with memories, mostly pictures of my family, my dad and aunt in front of the Twin Towers, my grandmother at the Grand Canyon, and various other photos from my grandfather's many backpacking trips. In the living room, over 30 camping lanterns and flashlights dangle from the ceiling, part of his collection from decades of outdoor adventures. Just beside the living room is a kitchen with a small dining table, just enough for a Bible, a few bowls, and some metal chopsticks. When we eat together, it's always a modest meal. The portions are far too small for me, and my grandma's cooking, though made with love, is bland. Her taste buds have dulled over time, and seasoning is often lacking. Despite this, I've learned to savor something much more valuable: the stories that come with each meal. One night, as we sat at the table, I asked more about my grandfather's experiences during the Korean War and the Japanese occupation of Korea, and he shared a story that I had never heard before. He, along with my grandmother, told me about how he was the first person from his town to cross the Han River during the Korean War. With heavy bags balanced on his head, he led his group of refugees to the shallowest part of the river they could find. The freezing water was up to his neck, and with every step, the current tugged at his legs, threatening to pull him under. Behind him, he could hear people shouting, struggling to keep up. Many were swept away by the river, never making it across. But my grandfather pressed on and somehow made it to the other side, leading the way for many others behind him. Sitting there, listening to this story, I wondered, how could I have not heard such a cool story until now? It hit me that these moments would have been lost if I had not made the intentional effort to spend time with him. Each story he shared wasn't just a piece of his life. It was a piece of our family's history, a connection to a past I could only understand through his words. And yet, many details have already been lost to time. My grandfather doesn't remember specific names and dates from the stories he tells anymore. He's almost 90, and I regret not having these conversations sooner, when his mind was sharper and his memories clearer. I often wonder what other stories I might have missed because I waited too long. What details, what experiences have slipped away because no one asked. Now, I'm left with the fragments he remembers, but I'll never fully know the extent of what he lived through. It's a regret I hope none of you will have to experience. Don't wait until it's too late to ask your grandparents or elders about their lives. Their stories are more than just distant tales from the past. They are the threads that connect our families, our history, and ultimately ourselves. Every story, even in fragments, is a gift. Although my grandfather's life was shaped by war and loss, it also revealed the deeply rooted nationalism and enduring Korean spirit that continues to shape our family to this day. His resilience and sense of identity is something I wouldn't fully appreciate if I didn't sit down and listen to his stories. Later in his life, he went on to create the first blood and organ donation nonprofit in South Korea, a foundation that has grown immensely. From spending just a few meaningful days with him, I now better understand how this life of service began. His early struggles and hardships forged a character that is both tough and compassionate for others. So, what can you take from this? What I've learned through my conversations with my grandfather is that connecting with your elders isn't just about gathering facts or fulfilling an obligation. When we take the time to sit with our elders and really listen, we connect with something larger than ourselves, our heritage. Their stories are more than memories of adversity and resilience. They are the foundation for our traditions, values, and sense of identity. Through their experiences, we come to understand the deep cultural roots that shape who we are today. These stories remind us that no matter the struggles, our traditions and heritage offer us strength, continuity, and a path forward. By preserving and honoring them, we carry forward the essence of where we come from and ensure that future generations remain connected to that same rich legacy. I encourage each of you to make the same effort. Visit your grandparents, elders in your communities, and intentionally ask them about their experiences. You might hear a story that changes the way you see them or deepens your understanding of who you are and where you come from. By doing so, you not only honor them, but also recognize the sacrifices and experiences that have shaped your life, whether you realize it or not. Because one day, no one will be able to see Jintak's sagging lip or feel the fragment of the grenade beneath his skin. But it will be up to me to carry forward his stories, ensuring that his legacy and the lessons of his life are never forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Eliot. I feel safe to say in situations like this, they were the speakers, and they are honored, but I think it speaks all of us that goes into this. Also, thank you to Mr. Service and Mr. Phillips for working with them, and to all their classmates who helped them with this. What a great way to start the day, to hear those thoughts. And I was struck by how both of those speeches hit upon themes that we've talked about this year. I think one, the power of stories. You may recall some of our earlier halls talking about the power of story and how that affects us and shapes us and guides us. And then I think of a more recent theme. Both of those had to do with the legacies of ancestry and history, and thinking about how those sorts of connections ground us, how they put us in a point in time. They give us a sense of humility, but also a sense of possibility. I really like the themes in there about how understanding our own ancestry and family can give us a sense of purpose and principle. And I think about what we have up here, how the ages past can help guide us in our years to come. And I think that was a really important message there. And so understanding what has come before us can give us those connections to ground us for the future. So thank you, gentlemen, for that. I wish you all a wonderful Thursday. Class 1.